Welcome to Deep Deep Dive. Today, we are pulling wisdom from the ancient world, specifically diving into the uh, powerful and, well, profoundly relevant teachings of Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher.
Yeah, a really important figure. And our source material, it's this compilation by T.W. Rolleston, right? Pulling from the Encheiridion, the handbook, and the Dissertations, fragments.
Exactly. It's a great collection, gives you this direct line to his thinking. And Rollston's intro really sets the stage, doesn't it?
It does. That whole context, the Hellenistic period
Hmm.
after Alexander, the whole political world just shifted.
Right. And public life, especially if you were trying to live with, integrity, it got really tough.
Yeah, these principled people kind of shut out from the usual ways of contributing, of serving the state.
Hmm.
And it forced them to ask these huge questions like, okay, if my worth isn't tied to my job or my political role, what is my worth?
Hmm.
Just as a person.
How do I fit into the bigger picture if I can't be a citizen in the old sense?
Exactly. How do I relate to the cosmos,
Huh?
to God? And, out of that difficulty, that real pressure, came some incredibly profound ethical thinking.
Which is what we want to tap into today. Our goal here is to pull out the key actionable insights from Epictetus, things that can genuinely help you, our listener, navigate, well, the sheer overload and complexity of modern life, sort of like he helped people back then.
And the absolute starting point, the idea you have to grasp first, is the single critical distinction he makes.
Yes, this is the foundation for everything else, isn't it? He basically divides the universe, everything you encounter, into just two buckets.
That's it. Things that are truly in our own power and things that are not in our power.
Simple, but not easy.
Well, the source stresses that really getting this distinction isn't just, intellectual gymnastics.
Yeah.
It's presented as the start of real education, learning where to actually focus your energy, your emotion.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Category 1, things in our power. What falls in there?
It's all about the will. Proheresis, the Greek term is. It's not just making a choice. It's your core faculty of judgment, your intention, your volition.
So my inner world.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Anything that's a direct function of your will. Your opinions, how you judge things, what you desire, what you try to avoid, your intentions, basically your internal responses and directives, that's your domain.
My thoughts, my values, what I aim for.
Okay, got it. Then there's category 2,
Yeah.
things not in our power. And this is, well, most of what we usually think of as life.
Like what?
Your physical body, its health, its limitations, your possessions, money, your reputation, what other people think, your job, public office, things like exile, captivity,
Yeah.
other people's actions,
Wow.
and just external events generally. Sickness, poverty, natural disasters, even death itself, all external, all not ultimately in your control.
Which sounds like basically everything we spend most of our time worrying about.
And that's exactly the revolutionary point Epictetus makes. He argues that the actual essence of good and evil isn't in those external things at all. It resides only within the sphere of the will.
So my job isn't good or bad in itself. My health isn't.
Nope. According to him, they're just matter for the will. They're the circumstances, the raw material life throws at you. But whether they result in good or evil depends entirely on how your will uses them, how you respond to them internally.
Ah, okay. So the goodness or badness happens inside me based on my judgment and response.
That's the core insight. And this leads to that principle he attributes to God, basically saying, if you want something truly good, get it from yourself. Real, dependable good isn't out there to be acquired. It's an internal state. It depends on your will and how you handle appearances.
Appearances. What are those?
That's the next crucial bit. How we interact with that external world we can't control. We do it through fantasia appearances. These are the initial impressions things make on us.
Like, I see a scary dog and my first thought is danger. That's the appearance.
Exactly. Or you hear criticism and the first flicker is defensiveness or hurt. Or you feel a pain and the immediate thought is, this is awful. That first hit, that initial impression, that's the appearance.
Is that first impression in my power?
The source is clear. No, that first impact just happens. But, and this is absolutely key, your assent to it, your syncatathesis, that is in your power.
My assent. You mean whether I agree with the initial impression?
Precisely. Whether you immediately sign off on it, yep, that's true, this is terrible,
Yeah.
or whether you pause, whether you question it, evaluate it. Especially if it relates to something external, something not in your power. That choice to agree or examine, that's your freedom.
So the untrained person just reacts, scary dog must run.
They assent immediately. The appearance hits.
Yeah.
They judge it as truth. This is terrifying. And their emotions and actions just follow automatically. The wise person, though, feels the initial impression, notes it, but doesn't just rubber stamp it.
They hesitate.
They might say, as the text puts it, "Await me a little appearance. Let me see what thou art and whence thou comest." They examine it. Is it true? Does it concern something truly good or evil, i.e. my will, or just an external?
It's like getting an email notification, but choosing whether to open it right away or check if it's actually important first.
That's a good modern analogy. The source uses things like a dish of water reflecting light. The water, your soul, doesn't have to be disturbed by the light, the appearance. Or those masks people use to scare kids, bugbears.
Bugbears.
Yeah, they look terrifying if you don't know what they are.
Hmm.
But if you look closely, you see it's just a mask, no real threat. Epictetus basically says things like death, poverty, pain, they're bugbears. Their power comes from our opinion of them, not their inherent nature.
That brings us to dealing with really tough stuff, like loss. The source has that passage about losing a child or wife. It sounds incredibly detached. It is returned.
It is jarring, isn't it? But it flows directly from that core principle. If loss is external, not in your power, it can't harm your core self, your will, where true good and evil lie.
So returned means?
The idea is that everything external, even our loved ones, isn't truly ours in an absolute sense. They are, in a way, lent to us by the universe, by the giver. When they're gone, the giver is simply reclaiming what was always his or its. It reframes it not as something taken from you, but something being returned to its source.
That's a massive shift. Viewing death not as this ultimate evil, but just a return, a change.
A change, exactly. A parting of body and spirit, not annihilation of your essential self. And while he acknowledges natural grief, he wasn't saying be unfeeling. He actually argued against Epicurus on that.
Right.
He insisted that grief shouldn't overwhelm the inner man. It shouldn't destroy your internal equilibrium, your peace.
Okay, what about when people hurt us? Insults, wrongdoing, that feels personal. How do we apply this?
Again, a powerful reframe. Epictetus says they act based on what seems right or reasonable to them in that moment. They're operating from their own potentially flawed judgments.
So they're the ones who are mistaken.
Yes. They are injured by their own false judgment, their own ignorance. You aren't harmed unless you assent to the idea that their opinion defines you, or that the external insult actually damages your core self.
So don't take it personally because they're just wrong.
He compares it to being angry at someone blind for not seeing, or someone deaf for not hearing. Their failing is internal to them. The suggested response isn't anger or hatred, which only disturbs your peace, but rather pity for their error.
And this leads into that practical tool, the two handles thing.
Absolutely. Every situation, every interaction have at least two handles. One you can grab, but it makes the situation impossible to carry. It leads to frustration, anger. The other allows you to carry it.
Give me the example again.
Your brother wrongs you. Handle one. He wronged me. That's heavy, breeds resentment, breaks the relationship. Handle two. He is my brother. We grew up together. He's human, prone to error. That handle lets you carry this situation with understanding, patience, maintaining your own inner state. You choose which handle to grasp.
This sounds like it scales up too, like dealing with bigger fears, tyrants, political instability.
Fundamentally, the tyrant, the soldiers, the external threats, they only seem powerful because of our opinions about the things they can control. Our bodies, our property, our freedom of movement.
But not the will.
Never the will. Epictetus throws down this gauntlet. If the tyrant says, I'll chain your leg, what do you value more? Your leg or your will's freedom? If you value the leg, you'll panic. If you value your will, your integrity, you can look him in the eye and say, if it seems profitable to you, then bind it. They can control the body, the external, but not your inner assent, not your character.
It makes me think of that analogy you mentioned earlier about external rewards.
Ah, the figs and almonds. Yes.
Yeah.
Things like status, money, praise. They're like figs and almonds scattered for children. The kids scramble, push, fight over them.
Mm-hmm.
Epictetus says, look, if some fall into your lap without you compromising yourself, fine, take them. But don't you dare start flattering, fawning, pushing others aside, compromising your integrity just to grab those trifles. They are not worth the cost to your inner state, your freedom from disturbance and baseness.
Okay, so if the real game is internal, cultivating the will,
Right.
how do we actually do that? What's the training?
Well, if philosophy starts by noticing how much we disagree, how contradictory our opinions are, the next step is to stop trusting bare opinion. We need a standard, a rule, something more reliable than just, it seems this way to me, to judge those appearances correctly.
Like needing scales to weigh things properly, not just guessing.
Exactly. So true education, for Epictetus, means learning to take our basic natural concepts like we all vaguely agree good should be beneficial or integrity is honorable and apply them correctly to specific situations. And always asking, is this in my power or not?
And this involves redirecting our emotions.
Big time. Instead of aiming our fear, our avoidance at external things, death, poverty, what people think, we turn that energy inward. We should fear making mistakes in our will. Fear becoming shameless, rash, dishonest, cowardly.
So fear internal failure, not external hardship.
Precisely. He uses that image of deer running from hunters' feathers right into the nets. We flee superficial scares but blunder right into genuine harm to our character. So be bold about things outside your will, like facing death, but cautious and meticulous about things within your will where your choices shape who you are.
And this takes practice, like strengthening a muscle.
Absolutely. Habit is key. Any faculty, including our tendencies towards anger or greed, gets stronger with use. Act angry often, you become an angrier person. Consistently apply reason, pause, judge rightly, the faculty strengthens. If you don't use reason, he says, the soul gets callous, unresponsive.
So when a tempting or disturbing appearance hits, what's the technique?
Don't get swept away. First step, pause. Question it. Hold on, appearance. Let me see who you really are.
Yeah.
Don't let that first impression dictate everything that follows. Then actively bring in a counter-impression. If it's a vile or tempting thought, summon unfair and noble appearance. Think about virtue, integrity, the consequences. Counter the negative with a deliberate positive focus rooted in your principles. This active resistance, he says, is how you build strong shoulders to bear difficult appearances.
And if you do this work and you're clear something is the right thing to do, even if it's unpopular?
Then do it.
Oh, then no.
According to Epictetus, if the action itself is wrong, then yeah, avoid it. But if you've discerned it's right, why hide? Why fear the mistaken judgments of others? Their opinion is external, not in your power, and ultimately irrelevant to your integrity.
So what is the payoff? What's the fruit, as the source calls it, of all this inner work?
3 things primarily: tranquility, courage, and freedom. Real freedom, not just being out of chains, but an internal freedom that no external circumstance can touch. Those who learn this way, they are the truly free.
And this ties into a really profound view of what a human being is, doesn't it?
Deeply. The idea that each of us is a piece of God. We contain a fragment of the divine within us. Our true origin, our ancestry, is divine.
Which isn't just a nice thought, it sets a standard for behavior.
Exactly. If that's your heritage, you should act accordingly. Be reverent, faithful, high-minded, unterrified, unshaken by passions, untroubled. Live up to your divine spark.
We're not just passive creations, then.
No. He contrasts a beautiful statue by Phidias, perfect but fixed, unchanging with us, made by Zeus. We are living works endowed with mind, intelligence, right reason, the very essence of the divine. That potential is what we're meant to cultivate.
That sounds like the basis for what the source calls the fuse of a philosopher. Not muscles, but...
Inner strength, yeah. It's defined by things like a pursuit that never fails, because you're aiming only at what's in your power. An avoidance that never miscarries, because you're avoiding internal error, not external events you can't control anyway. It's about having appropriate desires, careful resolutions, cautious assent to appearances. It's the practical strength of a well-trained will.
And this perspective even transforms things like love and friendship.
It has to.
Yeah.
Epictetus argues that real, stable love and friendship can't be based on externals, looks, shared hobbies, circumstances, because those things are unstable, they change.
Right.
True connection is based on the will, on shared values, on seeing the good within the other person's character, on a mutual commitment to virtue. Love based on externals is flimsy, like, he says, dog whelps playing cute but fleeting. True friendship is built on something much deeper and more solid, the shared quality of will.
So bringing this down to earth, if someone is trying to live this way, how do they actually function in the day-to-day world? Can you be a Stoic and, still have a life?
Epictetus definitely addresses this. He even sketches out this very intense ideal, the cynic philosopher figure, someone totally dedicated to serving God, viewing all humanity as their family, focused on this bigger polity of universal well-being, not just local politics.
That sounds demanding. Like maybe giving up normal life, marriage, kids. The source mentions a debate around that.
It's a high bar, that cynic ideal. It emphasizes avoiding personal ties that might hinder this universal mission. But the text also brings up counterexamples, like Epaminondas or Homer, who served humanity greatly without having children in the traditional sense, suggesting different paths to contribution.
Okay, but for most of us not aiming for that specific cynic role, how do we apply these ideas while still engaging in society, work, family?
The absolute baseline is maintain your integrity, guard your faith and piety, as the source says. Whatever external role you take on job, family, community involvement, never sacrifice your core principles, your character, your relationship with a divine order for it. If a promotion requires you to be dishonest, Epictetus would say the cost is too high. The external gain isn't worth the internal damage.
And just everyday social interactions, how should we handle those?
The advice is pretty straightforward, if maybe countercultural today. Generally, keep silent rather than speaking unnecessarily. When you do speak, be concise and choose your topics wisely. Avoid trivial stuff, sports scores, celebrity gossip, complaining about food.
Huh.
Yeah. And definitely avoid blaming or praising people excessively. Try, if you can, to gently steer conversations towards things that are worthwhile, seemly, constructive.
What about when you're the target? Insults, criticism in a social setting.
The classic Stoic move.
Yeah.
Don't jump to defend yourself about the external thing. Instead, turn inward. The recommended thought, or even statement, is something like, he clearly doesn't know my other faults, or he wouldn't have mentioned only these.
Wow, that takes some practice.
It does, but notice how it shifts the focus. It's not about winning the argument or defending your reputation, external. It's about acknowledging your own potential for internal error, which is in your power, and not letting the external barb disturb you.
Dealing with powerful people, going to meetings, asking for things.
Manage your expectations. Assume you might be rejected, ignored, shut out. Don't pin your hopes on the external outcome. Go if you must, do your part with integrity, but accept whatever happens without resentment or thinking that was a waste of time. The value is in how you acted internal, not the result external.
And there were some specific habits to avoid, too, things that kind of lower your tone.
Yeah, things like excessive, uncontrolled laughter, seen as potentially vulgar or undignified, constantly boasting about your own past deeds, boring and self-absorbed, and participating in toxic or vicious conversation, it damages you. If you can't shift the tone, better to show your disapproval with silence or by quietly leaving.
All this careful judgment points to the importance of reason itself and logic in his system.
Absolutely. Reason is the faculty that organizes everything else. So reason must be able to organize and examine itself. That's where logic comes in. Logic is the tool set for distinguishing true from false, what merely seems from what is. It's essential for correctly evaluating those initial appearances.
It sharpens the main tool we have, our judgment.
Exactly. And while all our faculties are valuable, being articulate, being strong, having good eyesight, being logical, Epictetus insists the will is supreme. Why? Because the will is the faculty that uses all the others. It's the well-trained will that ultimately makes a person good or bad. So respect other skills, but always prioritize the cultivation of the will.
And finally, he uses these big metaphors for life itself, right? Like life as a journey or even warfare.
Yes, powerful images. You're assigned a post, like a citizen in the world's city or a soldier in God's army. Your duty is to hold that post, play your assigned part. Don't get distracted by the comfortable ends along the way, the external pleasures or comforts that pull you off course. Accept the role, even the difficult assignments, knowing they come from the commander, from the divine plan or necessity. Play your part faithfully.
Okay, so let's try to crystallize this. If we pull together the main threads from this deep dive into Epictetus, the core actionable message seems to be your freedom, your peace, your true well-being depend only on what's inside your will, your judgments, your intentions.
That's the heart of it. And the way to cultivate that is by relentlessly distinguishing what's in your power from what isn't. Focus all your serious effort on the internal and learn to accept the external events, other people, circumstances not as good or bad in themselves, but just as the material your well-trained will needs to work with without letting it knock you off balance.
It really offers this incredibly solid foundation for resilience, for integrity, doesn't it? Regardless of what's happening outside, it puts the control firmly back inside you.
And it fosters this sense of acceptance, maybe even alignment with the bigger picture, with the way things unfold in the universe. Aligning your will with that larger necessity or divine will.
So as we wrap up, maybe the thought to leave with you, our listener, is this. Given Epictetus's stark claim that real freedom and happiness are only found within your will, completely independent of external circumstances, where are you focusing your efforts right now?
Are you scrambling after those external figs and almond status, Possessions, approval, things you can't ultimately control?
Or are you investing your primary energy in cultivating the one thing that is truly yours? The quality of your own judgment, your character, your inner state. Are you tending the garden within?
Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Epictetus.
We hope it gave you some valuable things to chew on.